You're listening to the Everyone's Wrong podcast. We leave trigger warnings, safe spaces, political correctness behind to explore the extremes of political discourse.
Hey, you fucks, this is Everyone's Wrong, and this is the second half of the show that we put out earlier this week. In this segment of the show, we're going to be talking about the 10 planks of communism. Basically, communism is shit on paper as well in practice. And I think we do a pretty good job of displaying that. I do want to make one, not a correction, but just one that I need to put more information into. When they talk about immigrants, they're not talking about people moving in. They're talking about expats moving out. So if you leave the country, then they take your shit while you're gone.
Okay, so in this episode, we have a guest, Mark, on. If you would like to know a little more about Mark, go back and listen to the first half of this episode, which we released on Monday. And I would like to make one correction. We laugh at Eli Bosnick about he makes the claim that Sargon started the Kekistani movement. And after looking a little further into it, it seems that Sargon and Jeff Holiday and some other Skeptic TM YouTubers did start it. Point is, it's not alt-right. It's smashing them rhetorically. It's a mockery of the alt-right.
Yes, and Eli does call them, does like say that it's alt-right.
Yeah, right. So anyway, but that's the last episode. Let's get into communism.
All right, we're back from the break, and in the first segment of the night, we're going to be jumping back into communism and Marxism. I know we've been talking about it a lot lately, but it's popping up in the social media a lot more than it has been in the past little bit. And one of the arguments that I keep hearing from people is that his theory wasn't for authoritarianism or for dictatorship. Now, at the end of his theory, maybe not when it gets turned back over to the people, but to get to there, it certainly is a dictatorship, and it certainly is authoritarianism. Dustin, you had a thought on that as well.
The only thing I said before the show, Dave, is that a lot of people say that it's a good idea on paper.
Exactly.
And the thing is, like, the 10 planks here is pretty much like the Cliff Notes version of Marxism, and you see that it's actually a terrible idea. A terrible idea. If you care about freedom, if you know anything about, markets or pricing or even like to have a skill hierarchy or anything. It fucks everything up. The
information that we receive, even everything. So, like Dustin just said, their claim is that true Marxism has never been implemented, and that it's a great idea. We just need to get there. Well, that's not true. True Marxism has been implemented. It just hasn't been fully fulfilled. So like the first part certainly has been implemented. And you see that in Russia, China, and every other communist country that's ever existed. The fact is that it's a very childish or naive thought to think that you're going to hand over 100% control to a dictatorship, and that dictatorship is just going to hand it back to you. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the government may be even thinking that we can't hand it back over to the people. What if this fails? So they may keep it just for that, or they may keep it because they like the power that they have. So we'll jump into these 10 planks.
Well, real quick, I'm gonna steal, or not steal. I'm gonna quote Jordan Peterson. I think on this one. And that's a lot of people when they say like Marxism just hasn't been done right or communism just hasn't been done right. What they're really saying is, if I was the dictator, I would have worked it out correctly. And I think that's something to keep in mind, because once again, when we go through these, they're not good ideas. They're fucking dictatorial ideas from top to bottom. But anyway, let's do it.
Abolition of private property in land and application of all rents of land to public purpose. Now, basically what that means is that any land or property that is owned by anybody else is going to be taken by the government and reused for the society in general.
Okay, let's make one caveat here, though. The caveat being that your toothbrush, things like that, these are not going to be taken over by the government. They're talking about major industries and up until your home, basically. Your home, you are provided a home, but it's still essentially part of the state. They're not talking about just like television and things like that.
I think that was pretty clear in that. But if you do own a home that you've worked your entire life for, and they decide that they, like, first of all, as soon as the government takes over, you no longer own that home. And if you're still living there, but they decide that that property is needed for the betterment of the state, or even if just somebody in the government wants that property, your ass is moving out. Even if you've worked for it, it doesn't matter.
Of course, but I've seen a lot of strawman arguments by pseudo intellectuals online saying that they'll come in and take your television and shit, and it's just not right. So I just wanted to throw that caveat in there.
All right.
No, even your private home under the communist system, you have to have a certain number of certain number of public institutions, meaning that all means of production, so your businesses, they will all be confiscated and put to the public use. So there is no private business, there's no private land, and your home technically will be part of the state because it is part of the public interest. Or in Canada, we call things belonging to the government crown land. So it would, because we still have the monarchy system. But anyway, the crown or the public would own your home and the land on it. You're just allowed to live there. It's not yours anymore. Even
if you've bought and paid for it and worked your entire life for it, it now becomes part of the state and nobody owns any property. Okay.
Hold on. Hold on. I thought you were going to ask everyone what they thought about all,
sorry, Dustin.
No, it's fine. What comes to mind when I hear that particular plank is that, that which is owned by all is cared for by none. Does that make sense? How many times have you found a public bathroom you really want to use? Like, when someone owns something, they care about it. It is theirs and they maintain it much better than something that is not theirs. Like, rental properties are not cared for in the same way that a place where you have a mortgage and it's your property. And if you fuck up the sink, you have to fix it. You see, it's your problems and it's your worth that you build up and you care for, like when you give a teenager a car, they don't care for it because they didn't earn it and they didn't buy it and it's not theirs. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, you're also describing somewhat, what is known as the tragedy of the commons, meaning when a group of people own a particular or together share a particular plot of land, like say for raising cows, for instance. What will happen is one person will overgraze that area to better his stock, and another person will say, well, he's doing it, no one's saying anything to him, so he'll start to graze his animals until the resource of the grass, in this case, is depleted and it's no longer useful to anybody. And that happens.
I would also say that your property or your home is a form of protection from the elements and from outsiders. And to that extent, an extension of your identity and your personhood, right? You use it to protect yourself from the elements. And back in the day when Europeans would, like the Irish came to North America and they'd be like, go out into the fucking way out into the Midwest, you can have this little fucking lot of land, and then they would have to fight people off for it. It's a form of protection from the elements and from other people, Yeah. So I would say that taking your private property is also taking an extension of your identity, especially if you believe in freedom and owning things. Number 2. This one, anyways, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax system. Taxes are needed, but to heavily tax people, I would disagree with, because eventually through that graduated system of taxation, you get to where the government is now paying your wage instead of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you see this plank more often in social democracy or than you would in a communist regime like Stalin, because it everybody was working for the state at that point. But when in a democratic socialist country, they would highly tax because everything would be nationalized. You know what I mean? Like trains, planes, and automobile, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's where you see that. You don't see that much in communist regimes.
So this next one, it's about property, and I have a even bigger problem with than the original one, because it's not just abolition, it's confiscation. Confiscation of property of all immigrants and rebels. So, it's people that are against the communist system. Their property is just completely confiscated, and same with immigrants.
Yes, and what happens to the dissidents and the immigrants? I believe it starts with a goo and ends with a lag.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah.
But North America is the land of immigrants. So for people that claim to be egalitarianism in every fashion, which people that adhere to the Marxist ideology claim to be, that doesn't make very much sense to me, right? Like you're going to take...
But see, you have to understand that these people probably haven't read these planks either, or haven't even read most of Marx talks about. And the other portion of them just have this romantic idea of what Marxism is. They don't want to see it as it is when it's put into real practice.
They have their favorite quote, is what they have, Oh, profit is still wages of the fucking, worker, but they don't understand where they're going with the larger idea. Before we move on to the last one real quick, you have to strike a balance with progressive taxes, particularly, in the top, because productivity comes from investment into businesses. Right? They might not necessarily hire more people, but if they get better equipment, that means the productivity for the entire country goes up through each individual business. So it's a balance. If you have too progressive of a tax, you strangle out innovation and you strangle out infrastructure within the private sector. So anyway, let's move on.
Okay, Mark, do you have anything to say about the confiscation of immigrants and rebels' property?
Yeah, I guess I might add on, along the lines where it just seems like any group or anybody could just, be taken advantage of too easily.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? It seems really, really dicey there. If you're just, you may even be okay with the system, but you're just not perfect, or you just mess up, you're not working hard enough. And you just say the wrong thing, and then, there you go. You're in a gulag. You have no property. You have no rights. So you're done.
I'm a little concerned. They've already taken private property. So what are they taking from the immigrants again and the dissidents?
So in the first one, the private property thing, that was just an abolition, meaning you would still live there, but it's now governmental property. Where this one is a full confiscation. Like you're no longer fucking living there. You're fucking done.
I was joking about the gulag. Property. I was joking about the gulag, so that was gulag. No, okay, yeah.
This is fucking.
That's really gulag. That's really the gulag plank. Okay.
Yes.
Ooh,
okay.
Ooh, okay.
So next one. Centralization of all credit in the hands of the state by means of national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly.
Yeah, that's not a big problem either, is it? Like the centralized bank where the state controls everything. And they're going to just turn that over to the people. That sounds like a fairy tale if I ever heard one.
Well, we can't even get the fucking potholes repaired. How in the fuck do you expect a government with all the fucking red tape of a free society to a government that is like controlling everything? The swell of that government and the red tape, I'm missing the word that I'm looking for. The bureaucracy is the word I'm looking for, of a government of that size that would be controlling everything. It's bound to fail, and it has, and it's proven to have.
And one of the big issues is, Dave, if you have all the money from the, means of production at your disposal, if there is a business that fails, that's failing or losing money, the normal thing under a capitalist system would be to shut the doors and declare bankruptcy and move on. This system will continue to bail out that. There's endless pockets of money to do that with. So you start to stifle innovation and
let's be real though, Ed. Let's be real. There's not endless pockets of money.
No, but I mean, compared to, say, a capitalist country, not a capitalist country, but a small business here in Canada doesn't have the resources of the entire population.
Of course not. And one of the things that I've often been thinking about lately is, so for myself, a sole proprietor, I use labor sometimes, but I don't use it all the time, right? So like for somebody that owns a business like myself, that the business is myself, I wonder what they would do. Would they force me to hire workers? Would they take my business and then say, like, first of all, I wouldn't run it anymore. Like because there's no incentive for me to do so, right?
Wouldn't you just do what the state tells you?
Yeah.
No,
like you're a skilled worker.
But then there's gulag if you don't.
Right. They tell you to do something, like they give you what you have, and you fucking do what they say. Am I missing something?
Well, yeah. The point of I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah. So after the gulag, you okay?
No,
it was immigrants and who? What was the other word they used?
Rebels.
Right. Yeah. I use dissidents. Yeah. Okay. Well, these are the droids you're looking for. Off to gulag for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Anyway, move on.
Okay. Centralization of the means of communication and transportation in the hands of the state. Because that's the internet. What we want. Seize the internet. Seize media. Like people like, and I was calling Trump out on this too. The thing where he was saying that he wanted to shut down NBC News. This is basically a tactic, and it's still a tactic used in Russia, China, obviously. Look at North Korea. They own the media, right? The people only get, so like we have laws against this. They're called monopoly laws. So like if you live in a town, you're not allowed to own the newspaper, the radio station, and the television station, because then the people of that town in Canada and the United States are only getting the information from one owner of a company. So you're not allowed to actually do that. But in communism, not only do they think it's a good thing that there's a monopoly, but that the state should run it. So even if things are running bad, you're only going to get that, things are great, or America sucks, or, the West is evil. And this is a specific tactic used to brainwash the population into submission.
And because it becomes a 24-hour propaganda machine.
Mm-hmm. And then if you take means of transportation, then you're deciding where people go and when they go. So if you want to keep a certain section of the population in one area, well, then they're going to be in that area because you control the transportation. And you also control the transportation of goods. Because let's not forget, transportation isn't just people moving around. It's cattle, it's freight, it's what's coming into the country. So you're controlling what part of the country, what is going to, and so I could see them using that as a tactic of suppression in itself.
Right. No food for the Slavs. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Moving on. Or Ed, do you have anything to say about that?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state, the bringing into cultivation of wastelands and the improvements of soil, generally in accordance with the common plan.
So basically, all land is confiscated to the government, and they have the responsibility to maintain it. Never happened under Stalin. Never happened in any of the communist countries that we've seen.
Yeah, they never fixed all the bad lands and grow crops in the places they couldn't grow crops before. Yeah, it hasn't happened yet. Yeah, fair enough.
Like, you find that infrastructure actually gets worse.
Right. Without a competence hierarchy, you can't do anything well. That's why it always ends up collapsing it on itself, because like in our system, in a capitalist system, the people that are, at least most of the time, someone is competent in the position. That's how you get there. Not so under the other system. Like, why would people fight for the harder jobs? Why would, you have to force people to do everything? Mm-hmm. There's no rewards.
Yes.
I'd like to make just a general point about Marx here. One of the things that I find very ironic about Marx is that when he was living in Prussia, when he started to do when he started to write politically, he had to flee from Prussia because he was under the aristocracy of the Prussian royal family, and then he moved to France, which was socialist at the time, had a socialist government in. They didn't like his ideas, so he had to leave, and he found the only place where he could actually write his book Das Kapital. It was in a capitalist country known as Great Britain,
because it's a free country and you can write whatever you want.
And he lived on the inheritance of his parents. His parents had died and left him money, which is something that
funny, because I'm going to bring something up right now. Abolition of all rights of inheritance.
Yeah. And that's kind of hypocrisy right there, because he never had a stable job. So he lived on the inheritance of from his parents, and Engels actually gave him a stipend to live off, because he never could.
So here's the thing. Take away the normal inheritance, right? So I have a severely disabled child. Like, he is severely disabled. He's 8 years old, still in a diaper, barely speaks a word. Is going to need 100% care for the rest of his life. Okay? So I plan on leaving him insurance and some kind of inheritance so that I know that he's going to have something to fall back on later on in life. I worked for this money. It's my money. It's my insurance. I decide where it goes. If you start with saying the inheritance thing, like people shouldn't be able to inherit, they're just not going to save their money anymore. Go ahead, Ed.
No, that's exactly right. I wasn't speaking at that point anyway. Sorry, I think it was Mark.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, what's the point of owning or inheritance if it's going to be taken away? I mean, you work blood, sweat, and tears for a reason. It's if you have your kids, people you love, and there's no point to that. You're losing a lot of incentive in society to really do anything except survive.
Well, I think the goal of this plank is to, so early on they took the property, but they didn't take the personal belongings. So now this is how the state comes after the personal belongings later.
Really?
First they get the property, right? And you get to keep your things, but your kids don't get your things. The state does. So now everyone only gets what the state gives them. So it's a complete control mechanism.
Because basically, under what Marx had written in Das Kapital was that the state would give you everything you require for life: a roof over your head and food in your belly, and a chance to work. That was all that was needed under Marx's view of human beings, was that they needed that to sustain them. And I think that he misjudged exactly what humanity really needs is freedom. And I think that's one of the things that because he despised democracy.
Yeah. And I go one step further than you, not just freedom, a challenge. Mm-hmm. I think people need to be challenged in their lives. They need to be challenged in their ideology. I think as human beings that, we still have the same genetic makeup as the people that came from the Great Rift in Africa. I think we need physical challenges as well.
Well, I think that we need a competition, but the competition is in service of a dominance hierarchy. That's I believe it is deeply innate in who we are.
Okay, so competing does drive innovation. Right. But I think I don't think like competing within a group setting necessarily is a good thing. So if you look at a company and you have, it's better for one company for the group to work together. But if they're competing against another company with another group that's working together, that drives innovation.
Yeah. Well, you need both. You need to fight within your group for leadership.
Yes.
Right. So to be better than everyone in your group, but you also need to fight for your group to be better than the other. Like that's why there's individual and team sports and why they're both important.
Yes. But you need the freedom to be able to decide,
yes.
Like okay. So everybody needs the freedom to see who is going to be the best and the equal opportunity, not equal outcome.
Right. We're getting on a tangent though. Back to the planks.
Okay. So equal obligation, this is another segue one. Equal obligation of all to work, establishment of industries, armies, industrial armies, especially for agriculture. So I guess that means like groups of workers, industrial armies.
It means go back out and pick that cotton is what it means.
Basically.
It does.
Yeah. So equal obligation. So all citizens are obligated to work the same way. But in my view, some jobs are worth more. And also some people can't work. Like we have disabled people. And it's really funny that me, a person that supports capitalism, is more concerned about,
Well, I believe what they would say. Okay, so and what we're seeing here is one of those favorite quotes that I was talking about earlier is from each according to their ability and to each according to their need. And we're seeing that is being spelled out here. And it sounds like a good idea at first, but when you look into it, that's forced labor for one.
Okay.
From each according, and who decides what your ability is,
but
and then two, who decides what your need are. No, that's terrible.
Yeah.
What, Dave?
Yeah, but it doesn't say to each according to his need. Listen, equal obligation.
Yes, this is the other
all
side.
to work. It's contradictory to what, establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. It's contradictory to the quote that you're saying. The other quote is a Marx quote, but this is in direct contradiction to that. It says equal obligation.
That's true. That's true. You're right.
Not everybody can work the same. Not everybody so an older person's supposed to, have the same obligation as somebody that's 20. It doesn't make any sense to me. What do you think, Mark?
I agree. I think with that whole thing, it's just kind of messed up. If you're 20, you got more ability, but even at 20, what if you don't want to work? What if you want to work to get to the point, work hard so you don't have to work?
Well, that's just not going to happen because you can't own a business, remember?
Yeah. So there's no incentive.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing as there's no incentive in this system, it's just the system is just it's big utopian idea, but it's not personal utopia.
No. And this is sacrificing. No, you're exactly right. This is sacrificing the individual for the collective, and that is a big mistake, I think.
Yeah, because the success of the collective rides on the success of each individual. So if there's no drive to succeed within the individual, there is a success within the group. So yeah, absolutely, you're correct. By taking away one, you sabotage both. It's a cycle.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, number 9. Combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries, gradual abolition of the distinction between town and country by a more equable distribution of the population over the country. So it's basically telling people where they should live.
Yeah. Oh, see, we have to stress this too. Marx was writing in the 19th century, so 1800s. And what he saw was mercantilism really at its best, when capitalism was just emerging and it was very rough. It didn't have a lot of rules. There was a lot of child labor. And what he saw was an influx, people leaving agricultural jobs for more productive, highly sought after jobs in the city. So you see this big conglomerate of people into the city. And then when you get overpopulated cities, you'll get all kinds of nasty social problems like crime and all kinds of things. So he wanted to distribute everything back into this natural state, which is total horseshit, but because it never could work. People just don't want to do that. People want to live where they work.
Yeah, well, I also don't want to be told where I have to live, right? So if you're one of the people that gets picked randomly, that you have to leave the city that you're from, and then the government, as we learned, also controls the media and the transportation. How are you supposed to get back to the place that you're from? And we saw that in Germany, right? Like the separation between the two, in full effect. Okay, the last one I'm going to say I don't have a problem with, but this pertains to 1800 capitalism. I'm just going to read it off because it is part of the 10 planks, and I don't want anybody to come back and say, why didn't you fucking read all 10? Okay, free education for all children in government schools, abolition of children's factory labor in its present form, combination of education with industrial production. So half of it, I don't have a problem with it. Half of it, I do, because they're still expecting children to work, but they want to give them free education.
But my biggest issue is what type of education are they getting? Are they getting
that is true.
State-induced propaganda?
That is true. You are right, but at face value, free education is
good. Yeah,
is good. Yes, depending on the type of. You're right though, depending on the type of education. So I didn't think it through clear enough, and you caught me with my pants down a little bit.
Nah, I think go ahead, Dustin. Sorry.
Well, I'm thinking we have about 1/4 of a good idea out of 10 ideas. I think that we should probably kill 100 million people trying to enact this. That's what I'm thinking. 100, 150 million,
Well, I mean, the issue is that, I mean, there are some things that are idealistic about this whole concept, that everybody is equal. And if we didn't have hindsight as 2020 and actually saw this shit implemented, yeah, maybe we would want to try to see if it worked. You know what I mean? But once to see the practicalities actually play out, it's fucking nightmarish. I mean, to say the least.
And time and time and time again.
Again, yes,
every time.
And I would say, even though like there is a lot of like divide in Western culture right now between ideological left and ideological right, this is the most equal society that's ever existed.
Exactly.
Like it's never been easier for people to live. It's never been easier to get food. We make more money across the entire planet than ever before in history.
Even the poorest among us in Western civilization, I won't go into third world countries, but I mean Western civilizations, the poorest among us are wealthier than 99% of humans that have lived prior to the capitalist system coming in.
But Ed, even and I'm not, this is going to sound shitty, and I'm not saying that people in third world countries have money, but even their incomes have more than gone up 50%.
Mm-hmm.
Way more. Or 50 times, I mean. Like, it's not even comparable what capitalism and democracy has done for the planet as to what Marx's crazy ideology.
I mean, this whole notion that humans would naturally become more egalitarian, if you cut off, the means of production of individuals to a collective or the state seems obtuse in the slightest. I mean, how can anybody say that spontaneously people become more egalitarian because you forced them to?
What do you think, Mark?
Along with that, I think forcing people to be egalitarian, I think that just people like me just want to just run against that. You know, there's the rebellious nature. Some people that just want to go the opposite way.
Hey man, you're a rebel. They're confiscating your shit.
Yeah, for real. And then, yeah, totally.
Off to the gulags for you.
Yeah, fuck gulags. And another thing, when people say communism sounds good on paper, I fail to see that. Like, to me, it sounds good. Maybe the end result, if it worked, but what do you have to lose to get there?
Well, that's exactly the point here. And I hope that, because I know that like even the people that are espousing Marxism and that are arguing for communism didn't know about these 10 planks that I've been debating, and Ed's a witness to this. They didn't like it. It's just, I think a lot of times they get sold a song and dance about egalitarianism, and that's not what true communism is, but it is, because it's part of it. It's how Marx thought he was going to get to his ideal philosophy of people having so much extra time in their day to discover who they really are, because the system would just run itself, when that's not an actualization of reality. It isn't. We need tasks, and we need to be challenged to be fulfilled. I really, truly, honest. At least I do.
Let's put this segment in the gulag and move on.
Okay, let's do it.
I wanted to end the thing with a quote from Marx.
Okay, knock it out, man.
Marx said, "I am not a Marxist."
Oh, fucking shoot me. Fucking, oh my God.
That's what he said. So
I'm sure he did, while he was saying that from each according to their ability, and from each equally.
So what I'm saying is, Marx didn't subscribe to the thing he invented himself.
Yes. That makes no sense. I'm speechless.
You've been listening to the Everyone's Wrong podcast. You can find us on our homepage at Spreaker.com/Everyone's Wrong. You can also find us on iTunes and YouTube by searching for Everyone's Wrong podcast, or you can listen to us on your podcast app of choice by importing our RSS feed. You can follow us on Facebook.com/Everyone's Wrong, or join our closed Facebook group by searching Facebook for Everyone's Wrong After Hours. You can tweet us at wrong_pod or email us at everyone'swrongpodcast@gmail.com.